Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between green hills, there lived a poor farmer named Antonio. He was a kind-hearted and hard-working man, but despite all his efforts, he struggled to make ends meet. His small farm, located on the slopes of the hills, barely produced enough crops to feed his family. The soil was dry and cracked, and the plants, weak and yellowed, seemed to beg for rain. Every year, Antonio faced relentless droughts, voracious pests, and unexpected storms that devastated his hopes. Frequently, he looked at the wealthy landlords in the region, whose lands were vast and fertile, and wondered, why does success come so easily to them while I work day and night without seeing progress? What am I doing wrong? One day, feeling completely defeated, Antonio went to the village temple and sat there in silence, his eyes fixed on the ground, lost in dark thoughts. His mind was filled with doubts and frustrations, and he couldn't find a way out of his situation. An old wise man known as Master João, famous for his wisdom and compassion, noticed Antonio's sadness and approached him. "Son, why do you look so troubled?" asked the sage, his voice soft and comforting. "Master João," began Antonio, his voice trembling with frustration, "I work harder than anyone, but my life remains the same. I dream of having a fertile farm and a prosperous life for my family, but it feels impossible. No matter how hard I try, nothing changes." Master João smiled calmly and sat beside him. "Let me tell you a story that may change your perspective. Long ago, in another village..." Master João began his story. Long ago, in another village, there were two farmers named Tiago and Jonas. Both had small farms and were struggling due to a long drought. The scorching sun burned the land, turning it into fine dust. The plants had withered, and the air was heavy with the smell of parched earth. The villagers had lost hope, and many abandoned their fields, leaving them at the mercy of wind and time. One day, a wise sage visited the village. Tiago and Jonas went to him and asked, desperate, "Will it rain again? Will our crops grow back?" The sage smiled calmly and replied, "The rain will come when you truly believe it will." Tiago and Jonas left, thinking about the sage's words. Tiago was skeptical and scoffed. "How can belief bring rain?" And he continued to complain about the drought, sitting under the shade of a tree without preparing his land. Jonas, on the other hand, decided to believe the sage's words. Even though the sky was clear and blue, he began working hard. He tilled the soil with his calloused hands, removed the weeds that stubbornly grew, and planted seeds carefully. People laughed at him, shaking their heads in disapproval. "Why are you wasting your time? It won't rain." But Jonas only smiled, his eyes filled with determination, and replied, "I believe it will rain." Weeks passed, and then one day, dark. Clouds began to gather in the sky. The first drop of rain fell, cold and refreshing, followed by a heavy downpour. The thirsty land drank the water eagerly, and Jonas's crops sprouted into vibrant green fields, transforming the dry land into a lush carpet of life. Meanwhile, Tiago, who hadn't prepared his land, watched helplessly as his barren fields remained dry and lifeless, without even a sign of growth. When the sage returned, he said, "Jonas believed and acted. His belief turned into action, and that action brought success. Belief alone is not enough. True belief leads to effort, and effort leads to results." Antonio listened intently, feeling something shift inside him. "So believing isn't just wishing for something," he murmured, his voice filled with emotion. "It's acting as if it's already possible." Master João nodded, his eyes shining with wisdom. "Exactly, my son. If you truly believe in your dreams, you'll start working toward them, no matter how difficult the situation may seem. Many people fail because they only dream but never act. Believing is the first step, but taking action is what makes the difference." Antonio felt something shift inside him as he listened to Master João's words. He realized that for years he had been complaining about his situation, but never truly acted as if he believed things could change. "So it's not enough to just dream," said Antonio, his voice filled with reflection. "I need to start working. As if my dream is already happening." Master João smiled and placed a comforting hand on Antonio's shoulder. "Exactly, my son. Believing is the first step, but your actions are the soil where that belief grows. If you take care of that soil, it will flourish abundantly. From that day on, Antonio decided to change his mindset. He stopped blaming the weather, luck, or anything else for his problems. Instead, he began studying new farming techniques, learning how to enrich the soil using natural fertilizers and efficient irrigation systems. He also started planting drought-resistant crops, adapting to the harsh conditions of the village. At first, some villagers mocked him. "Why are you working so hard? It won't amount to anything," they said, shaking their heads in disapproval. But Antonio only smiled, determination shining in his eyes, and replied, "I believe in my work." There were difficult days. There were moments when he thought about giving up, especially when his early attempts failed. But he remembered Master João's words and kept going day after day, nurturing his belief with concrete actions. Years passed, and slowly, Antonio's farm began to prosper. His crops became healthy and productive, and he started earning enough money to expand his land. The same villagers who once laughed at him began seeking his advice. One day, as Antonio sat on the porch of his new home, surrounded by lush green fields, Master João appeared again. "Master João," exclaimed Antonio, rising to greet him. "Your words changed my life. I believed, acted, and finally achieved my dreams." Master João smiled and said, "Remember, my son, belief is like a seed. If you nurture it with action, it will grow into a strong tree. But if you let doubts take over, it will wither before it even sprouts." Those words stayed with Antonio forever. He not only became one of the most successful farmers in the region, but also inspired others to believe in themselves. His story spread to neighboring villages, motivating countless people to stop. Antonio learned that the power of belief isn't just about dreaming, it's about acting as if that dream is already possible. He realized that success doesn't come by chance, but through the combination of belief and continuous effort. Every small action he took, no matter how distant the results seemed, was a step toward the future he desired. So, I invite you to reflect. What is your dream? What are the barriers you face today? Remember, just like Antonio, you have the power to transform your reality. No matter how big the obstacles may seem, if you believe and act with determination, you can overcome them. If this story touched your heart, share in the comments below your city or region and a difficult situation you're facing. Your story might inspire others to believe in themselves. And here's a challenge for you. In the next 24 hours, take one small action that brings you closer to your dreams. It could be studying something new, starting a project, planting a literal or metaphorical seed, or simply taking the first step toward what you desire. Share in the comments what you chose to do. Let's spread inspiration and motivation together. If you enjoyed this message, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Together, we can learn to overcome our challenges and turn our dreams into reality. Remember, believing is the first step, but taking action is what makes all the difference. You are stronger than you think, and the future you desire is closer than it seems. Start today, even if it's with a small step, and you'll see how each action takes you farther than you ever imagined. Doubting and start acting toward their dreams.